unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you?
I'm doing good. That was best Saturday of the year for me. Gators won, Bulls won, Lightning got a shutout win. The only thing that made it better if Tennessee and Georgia tied.
Yeah, huge day. I mean, almost all the teams we cover won except for UCLA on Friday night, and actually UCLA didn't look that bad. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's jump into that because it is the first game. So this is the Week 12 recap of all the games. Let's go into it. Friday night, UCLA playing Washington. This game was back and forth. You know, it was 17-13 late. UCLA had a chance to get it to a 1-point game. They missed the field goal. And then Washington kind of gets some late scores there to make it look a lot worse than it was. You know, UCLA couldn't really take advantage of certain situations they were put into. They had some fumbles, just a lot of stuff, that mistakes that really kind of, put them in a bad position where it's like, if UCLA could have converted some of these drives, they would have been a lot better off. You know, you got to give it to Washington for, taking advantage of the situation and, making the most of it in the fourth quarter, really, because that was the difference. Because, it was close for most of it, but then Washington just kind of poured it on there at the end. They still have a chance, UCLA, at getting to a bowl game. It's a tough road because they're going to have to beat USC, but, it's not out of the question. It's a rivalry game. Anything can happen in those games. And then they should be able to beat Fresno State. So they have a chance. Their true test is next week, which I might go to that game. So if you are listening to this, watching this, look out for me in my Hater Radio gear at the game in the Rose Bowl. But Ian, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think the turning point in this game was when Will Rogers went down. It was kind of similar to what happened with A&M and LSU. When Will Rogers went down and Desmond Williams came in, he led 3 second-half scoring drives. And most of that was due to the Williams being much more mobile in the pocket. And that was something UCLA did not game plan against. They did a very good job against Will Rogers. But when Desmond Williams came in, it kind of just threw a monkey wrench in the whole plan. Usually when that happens, it's detrimental to the team with the injured QB. But in this case, it wasn't a good look for UCLA. Not to mention the 2 fumbles lost really hurt them. And you hit the nail on the head. They didn't capitalize enough on the turnovers, and that was really a missed opportunity. They played well. Just, I feel like this is a one that got away. The score does not tell the whole story of the game. UCLA was in this game, but they just couldn't take advantage of the opportunities. Washington was almost begging for them to be beaten. But in the end, they survived. It was more Washington just kind of survived this game, and UCLA couldn't, jump on them.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like UCLA had their opportunities. They just couldn't take advantage of it. Will Rogers had 2 interceptions before he went out, and it just seemed like they had all these opportunities. They had a turnover on downs inside their side of the 50 for UCLA that they should have taken advantage of. And I don't even think they got a field goal out of it. I can't remember for sure, but it just all around not a good execution of the mistakes that Washington made. So let's move on to the next one is Texas, Arkansas on Saturday. Texas was up 10-0. Arkansas came back, made it 13-10. And, it looked like this was going to be a game. Texas had a lot of pressure on Green throughout the whole game. I don't know how many total sacks it was, but it was quite remarkable how much they were in the backfield the entire time. And credit to Arkansas for sticking to them and making it a game. Texas gets that late score, and they ended up getting the ball after a fumble loss by Arkansas, and Texas just bled the clock from there. And so, it looks like it's a 2010 victory, but you also have to remember a team like Tennessee, who is still one of the better teams in the conference, lost to this Arkansas team. And this Arkansas team has been pretty punchy as far as their opponents. And, they're probably better than their 5-5 record shows. They should be like a 7-3 team. But, credit to Texas going on the road, getting a win in a old rivalry that is renewed. I'm glad that games like these are coming about again, because Arkansas and Texas were a huge rivalry for many decades, and it's nice to see it again. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this game was more showing how good Texas's defense is than anything, because it showed that they can bail out their offense. Just truth be told, this was not the high-powered attack we were expecting from Texas. They didn't have a great game, and I know there was some criticism later in the day that they didn't look the part, and I was like, I agree. They didn't look like an elite offense, but you cannot tell me that was not an elite defense getting, I think it was six sats on Taylon Green. It was a remarkable day in the defense. They held them to 10 points. They forced the fumble. And that was the thing, is like when you have a defense like this, it makes it easier for your offense to run, because even if you have a day like this, you just needed to score 20 points and you had the game, because you knew the defense wasn't going to give up on the 20. So all in all, I would give the MVP of this game was definitely the Texas defense. Good job getting in the backfield. Green was harassed the entire day. And that's what it was going to take to, for Arkansas to have any chance, was to make sure Green had time in the pocket, and he just didn't. But all in all, it was, score may not be the prettiest, but this was one of Texas's best defensive performances of the year.
Yeah, and at this point, it's survive and advance, because, there's a chance that Texas might not play for the SEC championship game. And at this point, they're just really just trying to definitely secure a playoff bid, because once you're in, that's all that matters. Anything can happen once you're in, and it'll show this year, because this is the first year of the 12-team playoff. But once we see that, people will start to realize that once you're, most important is getting into the playoff. Okay, moving on to Utah, Colorado. I want to hear your thoughts on this game before I give my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this was as big of a statement as Colorado could make, because not only are they past bowl eligibility, but now they are well within the driver's seat of the Big 12. And with the remaining games, I know they got Kansas and OK State next. It's not the most challenging of the last two games, but they had a great win against Tech the week before, and then they beat Cincinnati and blew out Arizona. But Utah was the real, kind of felt like a real test for them. And they absolutely came out firing. Now, in the first half, it wasn't the prettiest. I believe it was either Utah tied it or they got within close, but Colorado just ran over them for the remainder of the game. That's when you have the talent of these guys like Sanders and obviously Travis Hunter on the defensive side. It just shows when you have that type of playmaker that you can really expand the playbook. And that's what Colorado did. They definitely did a great job on offense. One thing I want to note is that they did still commit 3 turnovers, which is something that obviously needs to be cleaned up if they're going to, advance it any further. Now, Utah committed 4, so great job on Colorado's defense, especially in the coverage. But with the 3 turnovers, Utah was, or Colorado was lucky not to be bitten too bad on that, because that could be a death sentence to some teams. But overall, they just really athleted Utah at the end of the day. That's what I got from this game, is that Utah just didn't have enough players and enough firepower to keep up with Colorado.
Yeah, and I'm totally in agreement on the talent level differential because, you know, the game was 35-24 into the fourth quarter, and then Colorado just took it to them and put on two late TDs, which honestly, you know, they didn't really have to get those late TDs, especially that Travis Hunter one, because it was like they could have just ran out the clock and the game was over. But they clearly were trying to get Hunter a touchdown there to help his Heisman stuff, but his Heisman campaign. But no, I will say in this game, obviously Wilson struggled, 3 interceptions, not gonna lead to many victories when you do that as a QB. And then also, Utah kept settling for field goals. There were
Mhm.
like 3 field goals on their drives in the first half, where if like 2 of them were touchdowns, the score at half would have been 21-17. That's a much closer game, and there's a more realistic shot of actually beating this team. This Utah offense has been challenged all year. They have been very subpar, and the defense has really held them in most of these games. They're 4-6 now. Like, obviously, this is not a good Utah team, and so like I understand what you're trying to say, that this is a good win for Colorado per se, but Colorado has not played Iowa State, has not played BYU, and has not played Arizona State. That is 3 of the 5 best teams in the Big 12, and they don't have to play them. So obviously, they've been able to feast on the mediocre to bad Big 12 teams, and that's why they're 8-2. Once they play a BYU, Iowa State, or Arizona State, they'll probably get beat. I have no doubt in my mind. And also, this KU game, we're going to talk about it later, but
Mhm.
KU is very sneaky good and probably one of the best 4-6 teams we've seen a long time, because they don't play to their record as well. They should be a lot better. They have played a lot of close games all year long, and especially against really good teams. They beat Iowa State pretty handedly, and then we're going to talk about it. They beat BYU as well. So like, this Kansas team can take it to Colorado, and because Daniels is a mobile quarterback, I believe that he's going to have his way with that defense, which I still am suspect on that defense. They've played decent, but they haven't played a really good offense yet. And I think once they come to this Kansas game, they're going to get beat. But that's my 2 cents on it. We'll talk more about Colorado this week, because now the hype train is off the rails, because the media is just completely buying into this team, and now we have to completely talk about it. They kind of went away for a little while, because they lost those 2 games and they were just incrementally beating bad teams, and now they've snuck up because they're 8-2. So now you have to talk about it. You can't ignore it. But let's see. Let's move on to Clemson Pitt. I really liked this Clemson team, and it just proves it in this game. I know this game was close. Klubnik looked really good in a lot of parts in this game, and they were up 17-7 at half, and I thought they were just going to, win by like 34 to like 15 or something, but give it to Pitt. They came back. They were able to tie the score. They went up, and then Klubnik late with a huge run. It was a great run by him to be able to win this game 24-20, even though Pitt had a chance at the end to try to win it. Just huge win. I mean, this cements them. I didn't see for sure, but this puts them in to the ACC championship game. And
Yeah.
so I think now it's just Miami and SMU have to fight out who gets the other spot. So, this Clemson team was left for dead. They lost to Louisville. They got smoked by UGA. And now look at them. They're 8-2. If they win the ACC championship game, they're in the playoffs. So credit to Dabo. They've really done well. It's been a struggle, but they've looked good in some of these games. The offense, honestly, in some of these wins, they've like blown out teams. And this is a dangerous team. Now, I know the 2 losses make them look worse, but I still feel like this is a dangerous team. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, this game, one thing, the story for Clemson this year has been how much Klubnik has matured as a quarterback. We remember last year and the year before, it was still kind of up in the air. And even at the beginning of this year, how well he was going to do. There were a lot of talks that, well, maybe he's not that good. Maybe he's overrated, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you what, this season, he has proved a lot of people wrong. And this game showed it. He put the team on his back and just said, I'm going to find a way to win this game. And that's exactly 100%. What he did. Klubnik, he led not only in passing, but in rushing too on those scrambles, especially the last one that went 50 yards for the game-winning touchdown. And what it really boiled down to was that he had to literally will Clemson to the win because they were almost outgained by 100 yards on Pitt and they were dominated in time of possession. But again, they found a way. Clemson found a way to win this one. The defense stepped up, which was very important. They did a really bad turnover on that fumble, but then defense was at least able to limit Pitt from how deep they would go. Pitt didn't really have too many chances in the red zone. That was a really good job by Clemson to make sure that Pitt didn't make the most of their opportunities, especially with all the time they had. But all in all, huge gutty win from Clemson. And yeah, this almost all but seals a chance for them in the ACC title because they play Citadel in South Carolina next. But yeah, they definitely made it very interesting and probably harder than it needed to be. But Pitt's always been a sticky team with them.
Yeah, and it's like you said, Klubnik. I think we all underestimated him. Last year he struggled a little bit, and he's coming to this game or into the season. He's played quite well, and he looks night and day different. Outside of the UGA and Louisville game, but like the rest of the season, he's looked tremendous. He'll have to keep proving himself as they go on, but that South Carolina game is going to be huge. I can't wait for that one. That should be exciting. Okay, moving on to Tulane Navy. I'm not going to talk about this one too much. Tulane wins 35-0, holds Navy to 113 total yards, 1 third down conversion, 1 fourth down conversion, just a stomping of all around. Just a great, tremendous defensive output by Tulane. Your thoughts, Ian, before we move on?
This was the Tulane team that I've been telling people about the year that they are still one of, if not the best group of 5 teams. I know they have their 2 losses, but undefeated in conference play. They are once again going back to the AAC. I think that's the 3rd year in a row, and their only 2 losses have been to K-State, which they almost beat, and Oklahoma, which was way closer than it probably said, although that is not the prettiest one. Now they finished the job against Memphis, which is not a layup. But all in all, this was, just re-cemented for me, how good Tulane still is. Because I don't think many people have been talking about them as much because it's still, they had the 2 losses and all that. But once again, back in the AAC championship, dominating win here. And this was a statement win because Navy was, had a lot of hype around them, and rightfully so. But Tulane just went in to Annapolis and, got the job done.
Nice. Okay, moving on. Another stomping, Virginia Notre Dame. This game was 35-0 at one point. Virginia scores 2 later TDs to make it look somewhat respectable, even though a 21-point loss is not that respectable. So Notre Dame wins 35-14. A lot of turnovers by Virginia. I think there was 4 in that 35-point output. So, a lot of mistakes by Virginia to give Notre Dame a huge lead. and they kind of just coasted in the second half. Jeremiah Love with a nice touchdown run, things like a 70-yard run. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this just showed like how good Notre Dame's defense is still. Now we've said a lot, that the offense may have been suspect this year, but the one consistent thing has been the defense. And it showed again, they were up 35-0. They gave up 2 garbage time touchdowns, but I think they gave up, or they forced 5 turnovers. They only allowed like 10 first downs the whole game, and they just made sure Virginia had no shot. Virginia was never a threat in this game, and that defense just made it. And it just made life so much easier for the offense when it was their turn to have the ball.
Yeah, and looking at Notre Dame's offensive output, they were 1 of 12 on third down, 3 of 4 on fourth down. So not a good look, but they get the job done because of the defense, like you said, which, defense always travels, even though it was a home game, like travels in the fact that it should always show up, while offense may have a bad day. You still can rely on your defense to win your games. Okay. Boston College, SMU. This was a really good game. It was really close all the way through. I didn't know much about Boston College's backup, Grayson James, but he played really well, considering he hasn't played all year, or not that much, and since Castellanos went out and is transferring. But Jennings, again, has a huge game. This kid is a stud. I hope more and more people start to realize who this kid is, because this offense with SMU is a machine. Like, Brashard Smith is a stud running back. They have playmakers all over the field. This team, I'm surprised they're not getting the love that they're getting. I don't get why that is. It seems like they haven't had any marquee games besides the Louisville game. And so it's like, it feels like, and the Pitt game, but like, I don't know, they haven't played Clemson or Miami, and they didn't have like outside the BYU game, they didn't have a tough non-conference schedule. So it's like, I don't know, it feels like they're undervalued a lot. They're 14th right now. They should be higher come the rankings today and the CFP rankings on Tuesday. So I don't know. I mean, if SMU wins out, if they win the ACC, then they'll get in automatically. I think their schedule is Cal and I believe Virginia. So they should win both of those games. And the ACC championship game, who knows? It'll probably be a coin flip between Miami and Clemson. I don't know what's going to happen with the tiebreaker. I don't know how it works. I know that all these conferences have figured out tiebreakers since, most of them gone to no divisions now. But it'll be interesting because if Miami, SMU, and Clemson all win out, they'll all have one loss, and it'll be tough to see one of them go. Like, SMU could go 11-1 and not get into the ACC championship game, and that actually might benefit them because they might get into the playoff because of that, which would be crazy. So let's see your thoughts, Ian, on this game.
Yeah, and with Kevin Jennings, this was like such a good performance. His accuracy on the deep ball is like next to none. He just throws them like a laser. Like the one touchdown through, they were down like, I think it was like 24-20 or something like that. He just absolutely lasered it in there. And yeah, you said it, the offense is just a machine right now. They another 30-point game. They are definitely, like you said, I don't think they are talked about it as much, but they blew out Pitt, which almost beat Clemson this week. They got Stanford. They had a touchdown win on Louisville, and they had a really not good loss against BYU. But other than that,
that was earlier in the year. That was earlier in the year, and wasn't Jennings not even playing in that game?
I don't remember. I
don't know if Stone was in there or not.
Maybe he got out early.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah,
SMU, yeah, they're again, still in the driver's seat of the AAC or ACC championship. This was another good one. And again, a gutty win because, Boston College came to play, but SMU found a way to win. They just, had the better firepower to win this type of game.
Okay. All right. Moving on to actually, you know what? SMU is undefeated in the ACC. So if they win out, they definitely get in. And as of right now, it has Clemson above Miami, but Miami has 2 more ACC games. They have Wake Forest and then Syracuse. So I don't know who holds the tiebreaker as of right now, but it'll be interesting to see the next couple of weeks. I mean, that Syracuse game looms large because Syracuse is 7-3. They're not a bad team in any way, shape, or form. They're the 4th best team in the ACC, and they should beat UConn next week. So that should be a really good game, Syracuse, Miami, to end the year. Okay, let's talk about it. Ian, I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll dive into it. But I want to hear just lay it on me. I want to hear your thoughts. Go ahead.
So I texted George. I said, "Oh, here's Billy Napier's one required good win of the year because he had it against Utah in year 1, he had it against Tennessee year 2, and this one this year." And just like, please, just make it last. Just really, but okay. All in all, what I got from this game, I am not exaggerating this. DJ Lagway, in the way of putting a team on his back, I have not seen since Tim Tebow. Yeah. Like, he has that game, he went out there and played one of the best games I have ever seen.
Just with one leg.
And that was the thing, is like what I said could be a problem with this game was that LSU obviously struggles against mobile quarterbacks, and Lagway clearly was not as mobile as he usually is. Didn't matter. His accuracy, a lot of talk, especially when he signed, was, well, he's more mobile than anything. But I think this season has showed that his greatest weapon is his accuracy. There were so many perfectly placed balls that he put, like rainbow, like over the shoulder lob passes that were just perfectly placed that nobody else in the country could hit. Only him was able to make that play. But it was definitely like a youth movement. Jane Baugh had that big run, had a great game. Badger had a great game. This was clearly Florida's best game of the year. They really came out. They played well. And for once, they didn't flinch. They were, LSU would not go away, and they were tied going into the 4th, and they had to find a way to win one, and they did. And Florida, took full advantage of that. And another thing is this is why I was saying Lagway kind of really carried them, because LSU dominated them on time of possession and first. Florida only had 13 first downs the whole game. And they didn't have 20 minutes of time of possession. But there were so many drives, like the last drive where Florida put it away. It was a 3-play drive. And that just shows how good that this offense can be when it's clicking. When it's not, it's really, really messy. But like I said, best win of the year for Florida. Now, you have to carry this momentum. Not saying you beat Ole Miss, but at least, put up a better fight than you against Texas, and then, get the job done in Tallahassee. For LSU, on the other hand, they're spiraling, because you had a game where, again, I still think like LSU could have won this game, but they just got in their own way. It was either like the play calling was like not where it needed to be. They gave up. The offensive line has obviously been a struggle for LSU these last 3 games. They gave up 7 sacks this game. It was like, you're not going to win with that. Nussmeier was getting absolutely buried behind the line. And that was the thing, is like, of all the time of possession, they didn't really move the ball that well. So that's something that obviously needs to be adjusted. And it might just be like, it's obviously too little too late this season, but overall, great win for Florida. They got to keep the momentum going, because we've seen where they get a big win, but then it's kind of a letdown the week after. So have a game against Ole Miss and take care of business in Tallahassee. Then we can start really looking at a brighter future ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest takeaway from this. Florida needs to build on the momentum. They cannot take this win against LSU and then come back next week in the swamp against Ole Miss and fail again, like last year with the Tennessee win and then losing to Kentucky a week later, and the year before when they beat Utah, huge win, and then lost to Kentucky again. So they have to build on this, and I think they can. I think the D line, man, those guys played their butts off all night long, like every one of them. Like Sapp, Banks, Dez played a great game. I mean, the Searcy, like everyone, like literally, Jack did. Like every guy played, was holding the line, filled their gaps. The pursuit on the dropbacks was great. I mean, they were pressuring LSU like every single dropback. They still had a lot of conversions. They completed 13 of 24 third downs and 2 of 4 on fourth down. But what they did in this game, which they haven't done in a lot the most of the year, is they held LSU to almost no non-explosive plays. I think it was very little. I don't know how many, but there wasn't like anything 30 plus the entire game for them, which made them have to drive the length of the field. And when they did, Florida would stop them and held them to field goals in multiple stops. So credit to the defense. The defense played their butts off all game and deserved this win. They were all over Nussmeier the entire game. And, they made him look very limited, even though he still had 260 yards. He only had the one touchdown throw. And, this defense just played lights out. And like you said, DJ Lagway, man, Lagway, there is really no words to describe how good this kid is and can be. This kid is a freshman starting his 4th game of his career. He's already 3-0 in games that he finished. He throws like the most amazing passes, like they're ropes, every one of them. That rope to Badger, to get to the Jacoby Jackson touchdown was just a thing of beauty. Badger had a heck of a game, and just Lagway was just with one leg and couldn't run, and he just stayed in the pocket and he worked that pocket to perfection. He would just move up when he needed to, and just to give him enough time to get the pass off. And it was a work of art, man. Like, I know his numbers are not like amazing to the point of like awe-inspiring. 226 yards is still really good. I think the one thing that I wanted to see more out of this offense in this game was to run the ball more. And I think they kind of got away from it at times and relied on DJ too much. Because they were gashing them at points. Montrell came back for a couple of runs, had a really good run. Jacoby Jackson had some runs, and obviously, Baugh had that tremendous run. Like, it was reminiscent of Auburn in 2019 when Michael P. Ryan ran that off. And just you could feel the energy through the screen. This was different. This was way different than it's felt like. And I know it felt like that in the Utah game and the Tennessee game as well. But it's like, I don't know. It feels like something tangible, something palpable is here. I don't know what to, I felt it all week. Like, during the week, I was like optimistic. And once I knew that DJ was going to play, man, it was like, oh yeah, we definitely have a real shot at this one. And I even talked to some guy at the gym the other day, and he's a Gator fan, and he was optimistic. And I'm like, all right, man, like, I think there's something about this kid. There really is. Like, he makes you believe. And it is like Tim Tebow. Tim made you believe that no matter what the score was, that you would win this game. I mean, and I think DJ is one of those kids, and he's even better though because he's a better thrower. Like DJ got a cannon, and it's not only a cannon, but it's precise and like the kid is just going to get better. This is just the beginning. He cannot leave until after his junior year. So we have him, if he's healthy, for another 2 years at least. This is just the beginning. And like, we'll see transfers coming in because of this kid, because they're going to want to come play for him. You know, it looks like, because all those recruits were at the game, they enjoyed it, and they were living it up and like seeing what is the possibilities here. And it's, you know, I'm extremely grateful that Billy got this win, because, you know, if they'd have lost here, it would have been the end of the season and they wouldn't have gone to a bowl game, and, you know, things would have looked rough. But they win convincingly, and, you know, the sky's the limit at this point, because this Ole Miss team is beatable. They lost to the LSU team that Florida just beat. And, you know, it's at home. You know, there's a lot building up for Florida here, and they should be able to have a chance in this game. And if they win that game and they beat Florida State, which they should, they will be 7-5 on the year with a chance of winning a bowl game, going 8-5. I just can't believe it. To go from where they were 1-2 to start the year, and everyone was ready to fire Billy. And Ian, we talked about it, you know, on the show. We were definitely adamant about this being it. But if he turns this thing around, I don't think anybody would have saw it coming. But credit to Scott Strickland for giving him that vote of confidence before the Texas game, because I think that really has, you know, that kind of like opened the door for the recruits to come into this game. And it's built a little bit of momentum here. Like we keep saying, the momentum is huge. Got to take advantage of it, Billy. Got to. All right, let's move on to USF Charlotte. And this was a stomping. I don't think I saw this coming. USF scored 31 points in the third quarter, which is crazy. That is a ton of points. A lot of turnovers for Charlotte, and USF took advantage of those. Pick sixes, scooping scores. Bryce Archie did not look that good. First pass of the game was an interception. Not a good start, but the run game was dominant. They had guys, let's see. They had 4 guys with 40 or more yards, and then 3 others with 29 or more. I mean, they were just running the ball at will. Charlotte has just been kind of beat down all year. They're 3-7. USF is just miles apart from this team. And, you know, we saw this at the beginning of the year. We talked about it. It was going to be a struggle to begin the year with the tough schedule, but the back half looked manageable, and they're doing that so far. They beat Charlotte here, and they have Tulsa and Rice to end the year. So that Tulsa game is a little bit tougher, but the game is at home, so maybe they have a shot there. You know, I like where this is going. They should at least beat Rice and get bowl eligibility with a chance to have a winning season again. It would be nice to win this Tulsa game. You know, it's going to be a tough game. I think they can, but it's going to be close. You know, hats off to Alex Golish for getting the guys ready for this game and not snoozing in this one. Yeah, they win 59-24, and a lot to play for the rest of the year. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to see out of USF, because you know, like we said, the expectations of them be like joining the upper echelon of the American aren't really going to be realized here, but still beat the teams you're supposed to. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that Charlotte is not one of the better teams in the conference. So prove it. And it got a little hairy. This is very similar to the FAU game. You know, Charlotte jumped out early. And I think going into the halftime, it was like 14-10. And then during that third quarter, Joyner got a huge run for a touchdown. And then Charlotte responded, which I was like, man, and that was like a big drive. But then the wheels fell off for Charlotte.
Yeah.
And 31 points, 24 of them, unanswered. And at that point, USF just cruised. And that was the thing I've noticed, is that they did that with FAU, and they've done this to other teams. Like the Southern Miss game is another one where it's like they wait until the third quarter and then they explode. You just need to give them the opportunity. Again, like I said, the one thing that Golish can do this year is, beat the teams you're supposed to and beat them convincingly. And USF did that. Mission accomplished against Charlotte. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility, which I think is a real possibility. And if you beat Tulsa and beat Rice, that's 1 win better than your regular season record last year. So that's still improvement. And again, too, Arkansas did not have a good game, but when the running game, which I have been emphasizing so much this year, when that is going, USF is near unstoppable offense. If you have that game where they are averaging 5-6 yards a carry, you got that defense right where you want them.
Yeah, and USF had 425 yards on the ground. Just a huge day. Okay, let's move on to Nebraska, USC. It was homecoming for USC. They had the old school logos on the field and the old time throwback jerseys. It looked really good. And then not only that, it was Jaden Mayava's first start. He looked really shaky at first. He was like 2 of 7 to start and a pick 6. And it didn't look good, but he kind of turned it around because he ended up 25 of 35 for 3 TDs, didn't throw another pick. And, USC hangs on. Raiola, it's a still work in progress. Their team is not as good as he is. So he needs more talent around him to eventually get to that point. But this USC team does have the talent. Jaquavius Marks, this kid, Woody Marks, like, I don't think people realize how good this kid is as a running back. He is a freak, and he just runs off like he runs off like a 10-yard clip like almost every time he touches the ball. He had a 7.7 average yesterday, 146 on the ground. Just a great day by him. Deuce Robinson had a really nice touchdown. Zachariah Branch had a nice touchdown. Hudson had Hudson had that bouncing ball one that bounced between the defender and him, and he still caught it. Little bit of a lucky day for USC in certain aspects, especially that last play where it should have been PI on the defense, but I don't know. It's tough because I saw some other people say it because I didn't get to watch the whole game because I was watching the Florida game, but other people were saying that they were not calling a lot of the hand checking and coverage that was, could have been PIs or holding. So if they weren't going to call stuff the whole game, why would they call it at the last play of the game? So it kind of checks out. And it is really tough to make that call at the end of the game because, that basically would have given Nebraska the ball at the 2, and they have a really good shot of scoring at that point. Regardless, USC gets the win. The Maivia era starts now, and USC is 5-5. They play Notre Dame and UCLA to end the year. It's going to be tough to get bowl eligible, but I think they can. I think they can probably beat UCLA. But regardless, I'll be at that game, UCLA, USC at the Rose Bowl. But Ian, your thoughts?
When it was announced that Norm Moss would be benched for Maivia, and Maivia was very good at UNLV, but I remember saying this is either going to make or break USC this season. And it was not looking good at the first. Again, the pick 6 did not help, but the balanced attack, Woody Marks, he had over 100 yards rushing, and Maivia, the arm strength is insane on that kid. Again, the accuracy is just one thing he needs to work on. But all in all, it was a really good game for USC. Yeah, that was in my opinion, clear pass interference. But for Nebraska, I mean, again, that's a game you had them. And either, like, again, it wasn't polished, definitely has a talent. He just, needs to get it together. But USC's defense really stepped up in this game, and they made sure that Nebraska had no other choice but to go to Raiola trying to win the game. There was no run game for the Cornhuskers, and that is something that is kind of needed when a quarterback like Raiola in his early years of development, to just give him some more time. But it was the other end of the spectrum for USC when you have a running back via a much better chance at finding open receivers. All in all, again, it was kind of a show of, like, this was a desperate win, and it showed. But all in all, a win's a win. There, they got Notre Dame and UCLA up. Need to win one to get bowl eligible. And I think it's within the wheelhouse. And for Nebraska, this is another, like, brutal loss for them.
Yeah, Nebraska, they have Wisconsin and Iowa in the next 2 weeks. So there's a chance they could get bowl eligible, because they haven't been bowl eligible in like 10 years. So hopefully they do it. I'd like to see them really kind of build on what they're doing and, make that program something, not maybe what it used to be, but just something that's like a 9-3 team every year would be nice to see. Okay. Game of the day. Missouri, South Carolina. What a finish this game was. It was back and forth. South Carolina, though, was up 21-6 at half. And I was like, oh, Missouri is frauds. They're proving it again. They're such a fraudulent team. But then, you know what? Hand it to them, because they definitely came back in this game. They were ahead near the end. And, I thought, honestly, with that Luther Burden touchdown at the end, that they were going to win it. And that Luther Burden touchdown, got to talk about this. That was probably, considering the situation, the amount of time, fourth down, one-handed catch, like everything about it has to be like catch of the year, because it was a perfect ball by Cook, and like Burden just got a guy all over him, sticks his left hand out, catches in it. Dude, it was unreal. Fourth down, like game on the line, like you have to have this, and just he pulls it in. This kid's going to be good in the NFL. Luther Burden is a stud. I know most people know him, but it's just like he's just a phenomenal wide receiver. And but got to give it to South Carolina as well, because they came into this game, building on the momentum of the last couple of weeks, that, thrashing of Vanderbilt, and they just took it to Missouri for most of this game in the first half. Were on their heels, and it looked like they were going to lose, and Sellers just, puts them on their back, on his back, and dude just gets him down the field. And that Raheem Sanders touchdown, the tunnel screen, just a great play.
Yeah.
I mean, this South Carolina team is a team that nobody wants to play right now. I'm telling you, none of the top teams would want to see this team in the playoffs, because this team is getting hot right now and getting better every week, to the point where, they have an easy one next week and then Clemson. So they should easily be 8-3 or 8-4 at worst. And they could beat Clemson. And if that's the case, then they would be 9-3. I don't know. If you have a Clemson win, a Missouri win, a Texas A&M win where you destroyed them, you lost close to Alabama, really lost close to LSU. The only bad loss that they have is that Ole Miss loss. And outside of that, but Sellers was hurt in that game. So I don't know. I don't know how you evaluate this team, especially if they win that Clemson game, because if they beat Clemson, I don't know how you hold them out. I really don't. I think they have to sneak in as like the 11th seed, and that would be crazy. But I just, that's my opinion. But Ian, your thoughts?
And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. South Carolina is the best 7-3 team in the country, and it's not even close because their 3 losses, like you said, were to LSU, which was they well within striking distance to win that one. Ole Miss, which was a 27-3 loss, and then they only lost by 2 against Bama. And then they really came out the gates firing against Missouri. Give credit, Missouri definitely did not back down, but the defense really let them down in this game. Missouri still scored 30 points. Let's not deny that, and they still couldn't win the game. The defense gave up almost 500 yards, and I think Sellers had 5 touchdowns alone. And yeah, that you can't allow that. But huge win for South Carolina. Yeah, and especially that, little shovel pass tunnel screen. Great call, great play. But huge win for South Carolina. And like I said, I will take them over a couple 2-loss or even 1-loss teams right now because they have shown that they can win these games, and the games that they're supposed to win, they win them convincingly.
Yeah, and their defense is stellar too. That's what the other thing is. Like, their D-line is a bunch of like athletic freaks, and they just are all over all these offenses that they play. This team is scary good, and look out for them. Okay, Boise State, San Jose State. We're not going to talk about it too much. Okay, Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty. What are your thoughts?
Man, I mean, Hunter definitely had a great performance, but again, there was a stat, and this is why I was like, dude, this dude's not normal. He had 3 touchdowns this game, another 150-plus yard performance, and there was a stat they showed. I think it was either this week or the week before. With guys lined up in the box, the average rush that Genty had. The only time Genty has not rushed more than 5 yards with this number of guys in the box was when they had 7 guys at the line. It was the only time, and it was still averaging 3 yards a carry. Like he's just like this train that nobody can stop. And I don't think the offensive line gets enough credit for Boise State. They have just these absolute units on the front that really punch you in the mouth as soon as they get the snap, and that just gives Genty all the free range he needs. But he always like breaks 1 or 2 tackles. And this game too, especially, just quickly go over it. It was kind of typical of Boise State. It was close, but they just wear you down with Genty in that running attack. And there's just no way San Jose State could have come up with it. Now, Travis Hunter, I think if I were to take the pick, I would still pick Genty, but I'm not going to. If it was any other year, I would say Travis Hunter would probably be the Heisman front runner easily.
Yeah, I mean, I like Genty a ton. I think he's super fast, and he proved it against the best team in the country in the Oregon game. So, like, clearly this is not a one-trick pony. Like, he can run the ball against anybody. And I think why I may have him over Hunter. Yes, Hunter is very talented, plays, a ton of snaps, plays both ways, and is good on both sides of the ball. But I think because he's not like the best corner in the league or in the country, and he's not the best wide receiver in the country, he's good at both of those. But Genty is by far the best running back, and I think he's by far, like, pound for pound, the best like player, because what he's doing number wise is absurd. He's really close to 30 touchdowns, and like he has 2 more games. If he gets 30 touchdowns, like that should be a wrap. I'm sorry, but like, I think Hunter has 2 interceptions on the year, maybe 3. But Genty's putting up huge numbers. Like, I don't think you can argue with what he's doing. And I think Hunter's going to have a tough game next week, because I think Jalen Daniels for KU is probably going to take advantage of him, but we'll see. Okay, moving on to, this was a surprise. Arizona State, Kansas State, both 7-2 coming into this game. And Arizona State was up 24-0 at one point. And this game was like never really close. I am totally amazed. K-State just, turned the ball over way too much. And, Arizona State took advantage of the turnovers, and they were the better team in this game. And I am not aware too much of Levitt, but Levitt looked really good. He had a ton of really good passes for Arizona State and really good touchdown throws. And this team is surprisingly good. I knew they were like decent, but like this only cements how good they are, because they're 8-2 now with a huge win on the road against Kansas State. And they have everything to play for at this point. They have a real shot at getting to the Big 12 championship game. And if they win that, they get in the playoff, which I don't think anyone would have saw, considering last year Scatabo was the quarterback for them most of the year. They were struggling to win games. But now they look a lot better. Scatabo is still there, but, now just a running back, because Levitt is actually a decent quarterback. And it's a shame because Avery Johnson, 2 interceptions, you can't have that. You gotta keep the mistakes down. And DJ Giddens even had a good game. He had a bunch of nice a lot of real good runs. They just couldn't take advantage, and it's a shame because I thought highly of this K-State team. We've talked about them all year. We thought they were poised to do some good things, but really that Houston loss kind of really took the wind out of their sail, and now they're just kind of whatever at this point. I mean, they'll still get a decent bowl game, but it's a shame because I thought there was more there. I thought there was actually some substance to this team. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and I think Kansas State, they've definitely been the most disappointing the last 2 weeks because they looked like they were on a roll going in. And then, that loss to Houston's kind of derailed everything. But the 3 turnovers were just brutal because, they were in a hole early, 24-0, and they were still committing turnovers, and they just couldn't recover. I just don't know what happened to this offense, because it used to be like this unit. They not explosive, but you can always count on them averaging 7 yards to carry, making it third and manageable, and that just was not the case. And the defense too, they first forced 1 turnover, and they weren't able to capitalize really off of that. And that was the thing with K-State, is that when they got the turnover, they would capitalize on it. They haven't done that in the last couple of weeks, so it's a very disappointing loss. But for Arizona State, this is a big win. Like you said, Levitt had a great game. I think he had the 3 touchdowns, and then Scatabo, now at running back, had a good too. And they've only lost. I think this is their 3rd win in a row. And this was definitely more convincing than the UCF game. And now they're got a real big date with BYU next.
Yeah, that's a huge game because that game basically decides. It's a winner take all game. Another loser goes home game. And, I don't know who I would pick in this game right now. We'll talk about it when we get to Wednesday, but yeah, it's in Tempe. No, where does Arizona State play?
No, they play in Tempe.
Tempe, okay. So anything is possible here, and I'm excited for it because BYU, I know they lost, and we'll talk about it, but definitely a really good team, and Arizona State is playing extremely well right now. So we have a huge game next week. So let's move on. Talking about 2 huge games, these monster games. Oregon, Wisconsin. This game was close the entire way. Oregon had to score a late touchdown just to tie it, and then a late field goal to put them ahead. But Wisconsin came to play. They were up 13-6 in the 3rd quarter into the 4th quarter. Oregon needed to really bounce back, and they did, and they survived. It is a tough place to play, Camp Randall, and Wisconsin is not a terrible team. They played Penn State well. This Oregon team, this happens almost every year for a highly ranked team. They're going to have one of those bad games, and it's just really as if the team can survive or not. And Oregon survives. They win this game, and they have the Washington game to go, but they pretty much, I think they secured a bid to the Big Ten championship game with this win. I'm not sure, but I'm almost positive because they tie with Ohio State even if they lose. So that would mean they would go ahead because they beat them. So Oregon, I think, has already punched their ticket. Well, actually, no, they tied with. If they tie with Penn State, I don't know who wins that head to head. So maybe they haven't clinched yet. Maybe they need like a team to lose or whatever. But either way, because Indiana's still undefeated as well, and they didn't play Indiana either. So I guess they haven't punched it yet. We'll see. But regardless, great season for them. They've pretty much punched their ticket to the playoff regardless, because even if they lose a game, I think they still get in. And, this Oregon team is still the most complete team. Defensively, they look great. Ugalele's brother, the D lineman, had a really good game. And, they did just enough to win. They were not mistake-free. But, again, it's one of those games where you just have to survive. They held Wisconsin in check for the most part, only 226 yards, but just a struggle. And they survived, like I said. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, then I remember I texted George too. I was like, Oregon, you okay? Because this was not what we expected from them. Now, this was the Oregon that we saw at the beginning of the year that was scaring everybody, including myself. They were really struggling against Idaho, Boise State, and we know how good Boise State is, but still, that was a game Oregon should have won more by and didn't need to wait a second. But they were on a roll, but man, they go into Madison, and it definitely was not looking pretty. They call a very questionable fake field goal late in the game, and they really got bailed out there because in my instance, you take the points because you force Wisconsin to have to score a touchdown. You have to. I really don't get this. If you kick that field goal, and this goes for all teams in every league of football, NFL, college, high school, if you make it a 6-point game, even if they score a touchdown to win the game, they still need more field to drive than they would for a field goal. Like they would only need what? They get the ball at the 25, and then they need to get to their 30 instead of going all the way to the end zone.
They were closer than that.
Yeah.
Because it was like inside the 20. It was like, I think it was at like the 15. And that's why I didn't have a problem with it. Because it was so close, it gave them worse field position than if they had just got a touchback on the kickoff. So it was worse field position. It's still a one-score game. And if you make it, then the game's over. I liked it. It didn't work. But also, the Wisconsin only had 96 passing yards at that point. They were not a threat to really score. Like they just didn't move the ball that well all game. And 96 passing yards is not. That's why he took that chance. He knew his defense was going to be able to make that stop. And so that's why I believe in it. But yes, I understand your thoughts as well. But continue. Sorry, I just had to jump in there.
No, you're good. But all in all, it was the thing. Lanning definitely had faith in his defense, and rightfully so. Defense really, again, comes in clutch for Oregon. One of the best defenses in the country, and it showed. And made sure Wisconsin didn't really have any threats in the game. But again, that offense, I think they just fell asleep at the wheel here, and they're, just make sure you don't do it again, because you got to make sure you don't fall into the trap that they did in the early year. They wrap it up, they get the bye week, and they wrap it up against Washington. Now you got to get ready for the Big Ten championship. You just cannot play these type of games when you're a playoff team.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, moving on. Tennessee, Georgia. And I know you had that if Nico was going to play this game, that Tennessee was going to win. I just felt like Tennessee was the better team for the first half of this game. And it seemed like Tennessee was going to end up taking this one. But then, they were shut out in the second half. Georgia gets those 2 scores. Delp had a huge game for Georgia. Carson Beck looked pretty good, 347, through the air, 2 TDs, no interceptions, which was huge. Nico looked kind of average. Dylan Sampson for Tennessee looked great. Had a nice touchdown run. It was an even game for the most part because Tennessee was able to move the ball pretty convincingly in the first half. And then in the second half, they just got stonewalled and Georgia just took over. And, only one fumble loss for the entire game. This game, I'm amazed that it was a 2-score game. It should have been a lot closer. The fumble loss was near the end of the game anyway. So, credit to Georgia. After getting smoked by Ole Miss, they could have packed it in, could have said we're not a playoff team, but they beat one of the better teams in the SEC. And now Georgia elevates to one of the better teams in the SEC and has a really good shot at getting to the SEC championship game. So we'll see. A lot to play out here. Texas and Texas A&M are both have a really good shot at getting to the SEC championship game. So the loser of that is likely out. Alabama still has a really good shot of getting there because of their win against Georgia. Ole Miss is still there as well. So there's still a lot to play out the next couple of weeks. But Georgia, most people left for dead, thought whatever. Now clearly in a good position to not only maybe get to this SEC championship game, but at this point pretty much assured themselves a playoff spot. So credit to Kirby Smart and those guys for winning that and moving forward. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and I came to a realization now with this Tennessee team under Heupel, they cannot win big games on the road. And that's not even that's almost like a fact now because obviously Heupel's first year, it was his first year. But then the second year where they went to number 1, they did beat Alabama. That was home. And then they got whipped by Georgia on the road. The year after, they lost a really bad game to Florida on the road. That was a big game. And then this one, they beat Alabama at home. Big game against Georgia on the road. Can't win it. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but they really struggled when it is in hostile environment. And that's something you're not going to win championships with. You have to go into enemy territory and you have to pull out a win. And they came out firing. They were up 10-0. They had a 2-possession lead, but the defensive coverage was really suspect. There were so many seam routes that were exposed in this game that Georgia just picked them apart on. It made it much easier for Beck, and Beck had a fantastic game, really a good read for him, over almost 400 yards. But for the defense, they made it really easy for him because of those seam routes. No, I mean, Georgia once again shows if it's a big game and it's going to come down to the wire, it's really hard for me to bet against them. And for Tennessee, again, something they're going to have to shake a stigma of is that they cannot win big games on the road.
All right, moving on. Cincinnati, Iowa State. I want to hear your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, so it was tricky tracking all this when it was going down. But I do remember when I was watching the game, Iowa State, I mean, they played angry. They were not having obviously they've lost to when they were in the driver's seat for the Big 12. And now they play poor old Cincinnati, who is really they've had a good year. They've gone 5-4, but it was close. But in the second half, Iowa State just wore them down, especially in the fourth quarter. Cincinnati had chances to put this one away, but we know this with Iowa State. They will not go away. You cannot keep them in the game. You're going to have to grind out a win. Cincinnati doesn't know how to do that. Iowa State does, and they just wore the Bearcats down. But it's a good win for Iowa State and a really needed one after they were reeling with back-to-back losses. And for Cincy, they're still a win away from bowl eligibility. But it gets a bit trickier because now you got to go on the road to Manhattan and K-State and got to end it with TCU.
Yeah, and Iowa State has Utah next week, which they should be able to win that one. And then a huge matchup against Kansas State. So, Iowa State still has a chance at this Big 12 championship berth. And I'd like to see it happen. I like Matt Campbell as a coach. I think he's done a tremendous job with Iowa State. And we'll see. I mean, there's a lot to play out with Arizona State, Colorado, BYU, and Iowa State with all these games left. Okay, last two, Washington State, New Mexico. I just mentioned it because they were 8-1 at that one point, but now they're 8-2. So we don't really have to talk about them. But New Mexico wins 38-35. Any thoughts?
How do you lose this game?
Yeah,
they were like Washington State was burying them, and like Mateer had over 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. But man, like the defense, like I don't know what it is. Like they could not keep New Mexico. I think at Dampier, they could not keep them in the pocket. I don't know why it was so hard for them to have their linebackers as spies, but that's just something they never adjusted to. They could not adjust to New Mexico's multiple attack, and it's just easily a really bad loss for Washington State. I mean, they're probably, don't have to worry about losing the Pac-12 title at least, but this is a game they should have won because as many yards, and they honestly had better team, but the defense it was a huge letdown.
Okay, last game. Kansas BYU. I mean, this Kansas team, I'm telling you, man, they are not a 4-6 team. They really are not. They are way better than their record shows. And this BYU team, I credit to them. They were there at the very end and they had the ball inside the 20 with 11 seconds left, and it was 4th down, and they just couldn't convert. This Kansas team with Jalen Daniels is very pesky. Daniels, is a maestro back there with their offense. He was making a ton of plays. And then Retzlaff, he's got really good command of BYU's offense, and he's really great with the option. And, they were moving the ball quite well, and they just couldn't convert. And, the mistakes that they made, Retzlaff with the interception, and I believe they had a fumble loss as well. It's a shame because this BYU team has been playing on the edge all year. They barely beat Oklahoma State. They've just been, flirting with losing all year, and they finally get beat. I still like them as a team, as a collective. They play all 3 phases very well. Their offense is not stellar where they can score a ton of points against anybody, but their defense is good enough to keep them in the games, and they score a lot of non-offensive touchdowns, which they didn't get in this game, which is huge because that probably is the difference in the game. They outgained Kansas 354 yards to 242. I still think BYU has a ton to play for. If they get to the Big 12 championship game, they can get to a playoff spot potentially. So there's a lot to play for in these next couple of weeks. Like we said, they've got Arizona State and Houston. The Arizona State game is huge now. Basically, like we said, a loser goes home match. And we'll talk about that game Wednesday. But your thoughts, Ian, before we end it.
Yeah, and again, this is a game for BYU. How do you lose this one? You had 100 more yards than Kansas, but what Kansas did really well was making sure they did not convert when BYU had their chances, and they made them pay dearly, especially in that 4th quarter when it was that punt. It was the BYU guys should have just let it go. I don't know if he tripped or if he actually dove for it, but slipped out, and I mean it's inside the 10-yard line. 1st and goal now for Kansas, instead of it being, the other way around. Just brutal, a really brutal loss for BYU. They're not, now, I mean, the Big 12, they're still in it. But yeah, this Kansas team definitely did not play like a 4-loss team. They really showed up and made BYU work for it. And again, this is what happens when you don't wake up for big games. This was obviously going to be a big game for Kansas, and BYU just didn't take it seriously.
Yeah, that Retzlaff interception in the end zone, that was huge. That's basically the difference in the game, because if they just get a field goal there, they only need a field goal to win it at the end, and they probably would have gotten it. And it's a shame because it was just a bad mistake and just a bad throw. But either way, that's the show. You can find all of our articles on haterradio.com. I have one right now about the win for Florida over LSU, and talking about just the overall momentum that should be built from this game. You can reach us at all of our socials, which are for X, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky as well. Blue Sky is just Hater Radio, but for X, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, and TikTok, it is at Hater_radio. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB, and for YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yeah, at you can reach me at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at G_Gator_G.
Okay, like, subscribe, comment, follow, post, tweet, everything. Help us out. We really appreciate it. The subscriber base for YouTube is going through the roof. We're already close to matching the month of October for subscribers, and we're only like 17 days into November, so we still have 2 weeks, so we can still like outpace that month tremendously. So I want to thank all of you for being subscribers. I'm glad these games are going off great because it's been a great season so far. We'll talk to you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on all of the social media accounts. And we'll see you then. Take care.